today, we are celebrating one of those moments where we return to the heart of the simplicity of God's call for everyone. Good morning, Arapahoe. Today, we're continuing our summer series called Today I Learned, and today I've been looking forward to because today I'm not the teacher of this. I get to be in my favorite place, which is alongside you as a learner from those who know much more than me as we learn from others and we learn from our history. And what an incredible history we're celebrating today. As you heard, today we're marking the 70-year anniversary of the ordination of women in the United Methodist Church as full ordained clergy leaders, 70 years of women in leadership in the United Methodist Church. And of course, as we heard from Pastor Kathy, 1956 is not when women started doing ministry. It's when the wider church caught up to what God has always been doing. What God has been doing throughout scriptures, throughout the beginning of time, throughout the work of God in the world, there have always been women who have led us. But 1956 is simply when the United Methodist Church as a whole finally said out loud, "Yes, God, we see what you have always been doing." And so today, I want to welcome for our time this morning, a panel of great women leaders in the United Methodist Church, some ordained women who are among us in our church. And so I want to invite forward Reverend Lisa Greenwood, who is president and CEO of Texas Methodist Foundation and has been a United Methodist ordained clergy. Reverend Shannon Hamrick as well, who's an ordained deacon in the United Methodist Church, and Reverend Holly Reinhardt Marion, who is retired, ordained United Methodist clergy with us as well too. So welcome Reverend Holly, Reverend Lisa, and Reverend Shannon this morning. Awesome. And so when I say that we are learning from our history, we're learning from some people who helped make it here in the room. And I say this with gratitude here this morning. This story that we're celebrating today is an important part of the legacy of this congregation. As you heard from Jess, Arapahoe has been shaped and led by strong women in leadership for as long as anyone here can remember. In this pulpit, on our staff, leading our ministries, chairing our committees and the tables where real decisions get made and leadership is shaped. And so today is a celebration of all of that and a chance to learn a little bit from those stories up close. And so Arapahoe, as we welcome our panel, let's take our seats and let's learn today together. I've got a couple mics for y'all this morning. And so we've got two, and we have three, and so y'all just share and pass as you go. But I'll start with you, Lisa, since you've got a mic there. Take us back to that moment that you knew you were called. What did you hear God say? What did you see that helps you believe it could be for you?
Right, so I grew up mostly at First Methodist Richardson and was very active in summer camp, and my call came at Bridgeport, as so many pastors can say at summer camp, and very supportive folks in youth ministry at the time and still today. And one of the things that I think is probably worth noting is that this would have been in probably 1987, and so worth noting that that the church welcomed me. They were very excited. Youth pastors were very excited. My home church was very excited. My parents did not know what to do with it at all, and it was really hard for me because, I mean, they're my biggest fans, right? And so it was really hard for a period of time. I will say that it didn't take long. And they, of course, were my biggest fans. And many of you know my parents. They were active at Arapahoe. And so this stole that I wear I was ordained in 92, and this was made by my family, drawn and painted, and my mom sewed it together. My mom doesn't sew, and so it was made by my family, and just, I think, emblematic of the support that my family has given all the years. But so the resistance for me didn't come from the church necessarily. It came from within a family that had only seen one way.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, thank you. Shannon, you just got a mic. Let's ask you a question. So, were there people that you saw that helped you believe that call could be for you?
Not women in ministry as much as when I went.
Flipped it off because it's habit. Sorry.
I wanted to be a doctor going through school, and then took chemistry and realized that would never, ever happen. And fortunately, I was taking psychology at the same time. It was also 1987. I was in high school, and there was one moment in my psychology class that I realized this is what God was calling me to, and I didn't even know that pastoral counseling existed. And so for me, it was really a walking with God, because what I was called to do didn't exist. A deacon didn't exist in the church. And so I majored in college in religion and strong minor in psychology. And each step along the way, I kept asking God, what are you wanting from me here? And went on to seminary, where I had a strong emphasis in pastoral counseling. The doors kept opening, but it was less about the people who I didn't experience a lot of resistance. It was more like, okay, whatever that is. It was more me finding my own path. And when I was in college, my male religion professors really encouraged me to get a PhD in psychology, because that's how I would get my authority as a woman. And I struggled with that. I didn't want a PhD in psychology. I was so eager to get into the world and do what God had called me to do, and all the research wasn't really meeting my gifts. And I'm so grateful that God kept leading me through a path that didn't match what the world would have wanted for me, what the church would have wanted for me per se. And then when I was about to go to social work school is when the church opened up the order of deacon, which fit perfectly to what God's calling was. And that was actually how I experienced it, was, oh, finally the church is recognizing what God has been telling me. And that was beautiful for me. I was supported along the way, but I also was told, it's hard to be a woman in ministry, and you better, have all the authority you can have. And I had to it was countercultural to let God give me that authority instead of people.
Yeah, wow. That's not something that anyone has ever told me. That just instead, be careful with the authority that you have is a lesson. And so just thinking about it from that perspective is interesting. Holly, speaking of blazing a path, when you told me that when you were ordained, you were the only ordained woman in your district in the Cal Pacific Conference. And so tell us a little bit about experiencing that call and stepping out and blazing that trail.
Well, the call started when, as I look back, it's been a journey for me, and I think it is for most people, but not everybody. We were sitting in church one day, my mom and I, and she asked me what I wanted to do when I grow up. And I said, I think maybe I'll be a nurse. And she said, what about a minister? And I said, don't be silly, Mom. Girls can't be ministers.
Huh.
Well, slowly throughout the years, she didn't really say anything more about that, but slowly throughout the years, that little seed expanded and grew as I found myself being called more and more to involvement in the life of a congregation and more to a life of compassion. And it just became clear. I floated around a little in terms of where I was going to be in ministry. I thought I was going to be doing ministry with migrant farm workers, but I didn't speak Spanish and I didn't take Spanish, so that was not really a helpful idea. So it just kept unfolding to the point where it was just, there is no other thing that I can possibly do and be true to myself and God.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing. Lisa, you, I love the soul story. What a moment that must have been to receive that. But that wasn't the end of the journey for you. And so, as you served in ministry, what did you carry that some of your male colleagues might not have, and what did you learn from carrying that?
So, I think one of the things, I don't know how else to say this other than, like, I'm a woman every day, every moment, right? And pick your thing that you are, that you wear in your skin, that you wear in your body. You are that all day, every day. And our culture has, so I think about the churches that I served, and the one where I was the senior pastor was in Northeast Texas, and they'd never had a woman in ministry in any position other than lay in their whole existence. And so every person in that congregation had seen ministry in a way. I mean, we've talked about this, Kathy's talked about that, like, seen ministry in a way, and that meant clothing, height, voice. You name it, that's what leadership style, what it is like to lead not just in worship, but in the finance meeting and the leadership council. Like, it just looks a certain way in their minds. And so they can like me as a human, like my preaching, and still every single day there's resistance, subtle and underneath, and sometimes really strong. And so I think what I carried every day in ministry was that I'm a woman. And the folks in the pew and in the meetings had to deal with that every day. When I went for my seating, my introduction to the Church and Commerce, and the staff parish committee was meeting, and they were very receptive. I know now kind of the conversations that happened ahead of time, but they were very receptive and warm and welcoming. And we were in the sanctuary, and they were showing me the sanctuary, and one of the staff parish folks said, "Well, we want you to push us." And I said, for a moment, my very presence is what is going to push this church. And you have to sort of be aware of that and know that you lean gently into and let the gospel do the pushing, if you will. And so that's kind of a glimpse maybe of what I learned along the way.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. Yeah. Do you want to add to that, Shannon?
Yes, because I have not been in a traditional pulpit pastor kind of a role. How I've experienced it is when I am on a committee for the conference, helping with a worship service, and being a woman, being a minority because I'm a woman. There are two things that happen. One is, to get on the committee, I usually need a male to invite me to have a seat at the table. And I'm incredibly grateful to the men clergy who have paved a way for me, but that shouldn't be necessary. And then the second piece is that when I'm asked to serve in a visual way, I don't know if that's because of optics or if that's because what I have to say and how my presence is something that is wanted. And so I don't know if I am being seen as a woman or if God speaking through me and in the embodiment of Holy Spirit is actually being experienced. And that is the second is what I would hope for, but sometimes it ends up being about optics.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Holly?
I as a pastor would carry with me the life, my whole life, my family, my parenting. When I had my daughter, the people in the church kept asking me, well, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do the ministry in the church while you have a baby? And my response was, I'm going to have a crib in my office, and I'm going to she sleeps a lot. I will take care of that. I will take care of her. And we worked it out. And the women in the church all said, oh yeah, we get work done while we have babies. And the men in the church were a little skeptical, but the women gave me a shower and bought a crib, a porta-crib, and filled it with stuff I would need for the baby. And they looked at me and they said, that's all for your office. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It was a good moment. But you carry other things too. You had talked about you're a woman all the time, and I had to deal with sexual stuff that I didn't have to deal with in other contexts. Now I might have, but I had a colleague hit on me, as it were. And when I talked to the district superintendent, he said, oh, you liked it. It was a compliment. Yeah, so did not get support from and he was a friend of the superintendent. And so there was a whole different way that that I had to present myself. I had to be just a little bit harder, and that gets old.
Yeah.
But I was also able to, as Tom puts it, pull the teeth of the lions in the den, with some of the churches and the places, and soften things up a bit.
Wow. Yeah, I love that thought. I grew up in a context in which everyone who prayed and spoke had that voice that you described, and that that articulation and that way of praying to God is what I heard. And so I think hearing a different voice was so important for me to learn more about who God is, and to be able to hear that as an entree to hear God in many voices and many expressions along the way. So what, you talked about what you carried as a woman clergy. What do you think about your gender identity helped make you the pastor that you are and have been? Do you want to start, Lisa? Or somebody else start? Okay.
I think because I'm a woman and I was raised to be a woman, I have just a wider view of what's going on. I think, and this is one of those things that questions that makes you want to make generalizations about genders, and not all women are one way and not all men are one way. But I want to say that for me, the openness that I have been taught, the way I can soften hard things, the way I can help a congregation heal after a very difficult experience in their lives as a congregation, have all been gifts that I have been given and have been able to share.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Yeah. Either of y'all want to answer that?
I'll give it a try.
Sure.
And I struggle to thank you for naming that we can't say all women are a certain way, but certainly by our culture that I grew up in, I learned to be nurturing, to be sensitive to other people, and I would say mixing that with the depth of psychology and even the spiritual focus when I was in seminary kind of combines to me, and I don't know how much this is because I'm a woman, but I can bring a lot of depth that I don't always experience from others in the same way. And so that is a way that God uses me uniquely, and I would imagine that some of the gender piece is in there just because that's kind of what we, how women, when I'm talking with other women, we tend to have a different kind of conversation than when I'm talking with men, and that is a huge generalization. My experience based on that is that we learn how to see things and name things in some deep ways that I think the church really benefits from.
I feel like I'd be echoing, but also simply to say that I think it's just evidence of the fact that God uses each of us and needs each of us to bring the uniquenesses that we offer. And if we limit who is speaking and who's in leadership to one part of the population, name whatever that is, we miss all this giftedness. And so, yeah.
Yeah, amen. Amen. So, last question for us today. There was a day when y'all were out in the pews. And so what would you say to the girl or the woman or the trans person or the non-masculine identifying person in the room who might be sensing a call right now? What would you say to them?
Let God use you. Mm-hmm. Take a step on that journey. You may not be in ministry in the way you think you will be, and you may. My husband, Tom, has a favorite saying that was on a banner in a church we once attended, and it said, "The sign of God is that you will be led where you did not plan to go." And indeed, that has been the case for me, and I think it would be the case for anyone who's gone through that.
Yeah.
I would say trust the nudging. Trust that still small voice or that tingle or that question. Believe it and don't keep it to yourself. Talk to somebody who you trust to help you discern that. We United Methodists like a lot of discernment. We have a lot of process, and there's lots of time, and be open to what that means. I know that as United Methodists, we believe that all people are ministers. All people have a way to serve in this world, and some of us are called into ordained ministry, and some of us are called into ministry in other ways, and that is all important. So every single person in this room can have a calling that isn't necessarily to a set-apart ministry of ordination. And I would say trust that you have gifts and that God is moving you to use your gifts to the best and highest purpose in this world.
And that, just to reiterate what Kathy said earlier, and her stole, like, God has always been calling women and the most unlikely folks out there, and God has used them in beautiful and transformative ways, and so unlikely in our minds, right? But that's what God has always done, and so we lean into that nudge, and
Wonderful.
grateful for it.
Thank you all so much for teaching us today and for your generosity of your experience and your story and your time today. Let's give a round of applause for these amazing folks. Cool. And these are, thank you so much. Stand together for just a moment so we can get a good picture of y'all on the screen. I'll get out of the way. What an amazing group. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for your time today. And these three are great exemplars of the call of ordained ministry, but they're not the only ones within our church, of course, who are ordained women in ministry on staff here. And I also want to recognize Dina Steiner, who was planning on being here with us today, but was not feeling up to it this morning. And then also Linda Carmichael, who's a retired licensed local pastor among us as well as many others within our congregation and beyond who have served in many ways. And so what a great day. I enjoyed the opportunity to learn alongside you all. I know more now than I did at 11 o'clock when we began today. But I hope the thing that we learned is what we heard from each person up here, that God's call has always been for all people. And especially in those moments where we feel unqualified, God's unqualified love is for us and for you. And that call is for you, whether it leads into ordained ministry or not. It is a call in the church and in our lives for you and for me, no matter our gender, our race, our orientation, our national origin, our life circumstances. God's call is for us, and who we are in our story is an important part of living out the fullness of what God calls us into. And so these who were there with us answered, as well as many, many others over 70 years, and what grew was 70 incredible years of preaching and baptizing and truth-telling and life blessing, and the whole church and each one of us is better for it. And so the story of the call to ministry is bigger than even just one profession or vocation. The women who led and who we see lead us also inspire the young person to picture themselves in leadership, at the head of a boardroom table or an operating table or a classroom or a courtroom or city council, or just their presence and the fullness of their identity wherever they find themselves. Because once you have watched a woman lead with a stole on, you see a glimpse of what the beautiful, infinite diversity of leadership and of God's creation looks like. The door swings a little wider open, and it continues to do that. I'm excited that in years we'll get to celebrate an anniversary like the full ordination of people of all gender identities and orientations as well, because it's the same beautiful story that has always been there, that God's call is for all people, and it is still being written. And Arapahoe, we get to be a part of that story through the years. And so I want to offer you two pieces of homework to take what you've learned and to go out into the world with it. Some small things, but two things that I want you to do this week. Somewhere in your life, there has been a woman whose ministry shaped you, whether they were clergy or not, whether they had a title or not. So I want you to think about who that might be. And this week, tell her out loud, in your heart if you need, or in writing if you're able. Give some evidence or a thank you note, a way of offering the generosity of your gratitude. And then second, if something has stirred in you this morning, hear the panel's call and charge again, that this call of God on our lives is for all people, whether it's within the church or out in the world. And so this morning, hear again, as you feel the call of God on your life. Is God calling me? The answer is yes, absolutely. And so come talk to one of us on staff, or, honestly, after you saw the panel this morning, you probably want to start with one of them as you go, or Pastor Kathy or Pastor Jenny. Happy to talk with that. But today we celebrate what God has done for 70 years, but we also celebrate that God has been calling all along. And the yes that we in the church say keeps getting bigger and bigger. And as we open the doors wider for all people. And so today, we want to say thank you to the reverends who are with us and leading us, and thanks be to God. Amen.